All right, we're starting a new Maamar today. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelik la'olam haba, which are the words of the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. All of Israel has a portion in the world to come. Why are we learning this Maamar now? This Maamar was originally delivered Shabbos Parshas Achrei, Shabbos Mavorchem HaChodesh Iyar. Well, today's Rosh Chodesh Iyar. It's Kedoshim, yeah. And the year, by the way, of when the Maamar was delivered originally was Tafshin Lamed Gimel, 1973. What's the connection of Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Leilam Haba to that time of year? Chodesh Iyar. Pirkei Avos, very good. During Sfira, we learn Pirkei Avos. Many of us continue even after Sfira, but it's Minig Yisrael to learn Pirkei Avos during Sfira. So every chapter of Pirkei Avos that we learn every Shabbos, customarily, we learn a chapter of Shabbos. Every chapter we learn, we start by reciting the Mishnah, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Leilam Haba. Okay? So that's the connection to this time of year. I have always felt an affinity for this Maamar, meaning every time I learn it, I feel good about it. I don't know how to describe it, because to say, oh, that's a good Maamar is a ridiculous statement, because first of all, what are we, art critics? Like, Chas v'sholom, it's so coarse to say what's a good Maamar, what's not. I mean, God forbid to imply there's something that's not a good Maamar. But subjectively speaking, I'm just saying, I enjoy this Maamar a lot, for whatever reason. Maybe you could help me figure out why I enjoy it, but I happen to, in fact, all the Maimonim that we've learned this year are ones, hey, isn't that funny? That all the Maimonim that we learned this year are ones that the teacher has a personal affinity for. Okay, that's my bias. What?
I was listening to the Coach Malcolm from Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm like getting
You're going through it, yeah.
And what I keep thinking is, Rabbi Taub's really enjoying. Like, that's the energy, is like, the rabbi is really having...
Which where? There or here?
No, there, as I'm listening. And now the rabbi's saying...
okay, good. Yeah, all right, yeah. They say, what do you call it? Get a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Okay,
Absolutely.
all right. All right. Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelik leilam haba. All Israel has a portion in the world to come. Okay. Dipirosh. Elam Haba, that the meaning of Elam Haba, the world to come, in this context, b'Mishnah zu, in this Mishnah, who Elam Atchiyah is the world of resurrection. The Rebbe is going to explain that there are different explanations or meanings of the term Elam Haba, literally world to come. In this context, it certainly means the one that refers to this physical world as it will be when the resurrection of the dead occurs. The resurrection of the dead, Tchias HaMesim, is one of the Yud Gimel Ikrim, one of the 13 principles of faith. Now, I'm going to make an announcement. This is not Stump the Rabbi. We are not going to entertain any questions. This is not, this is not summer camp. We are not going to entertain any questions about, well, which body will come back if there are reincarnations? Well, who will a woman marry if she remarried after her husband died? What age will they be? What clothes will they be wearing? We're not going to do that. Okay, not going to do that, because it's not the point. This Maamar is not to educate us about the process of Tchias HaMesim. This Maamar is to educate, in my humble opinion, the point of the Maamar is to help us appreciate the essential identity of every Jew, as well as the importance of physical mitzvahs. That's what I think the upshot of the Maamar is. So it's really not about Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim is a vehicle in order to get us into a discussion of some other concepts, which I believe are the aforementioned two, but there may be others, or there may be additional. Okay, fine. So, The Rebbe says in this Maamar, surely when it says, in this Mishnah, surely when it says Elam Haba, it's talking about the world of resurrection, as opposed to what? Sometimes Elam Haba can mean Gan Eden, the spiritual worlds, where the souls go for reward, what we call heaven. But we're going to explain all of this clearly in the Maamar. Okay. As is clear from the way the Mishnah continues and says, who are those who don't, who forfeit their portion of the world to come? Those who say that there is no resurrection in the Bible, meaning they say, what? I looked in the written scriptures, I didn't find any mention of this resurrection, which, by the way, it's very interesting. The Mishnah was written like 2,000 years ago. I don't know if you know, but about 2,000 years ago, there was an offshoot of Judaism which became very popular. It's still around. Might have heard of it. In the Roman Empire, about 2,000 years ago, an offshoot of Judaism which became extremely popular. Okay, so these people are still around, and they make tons of comments on my videos, and I didn't realize it was a trigger for them. They get very upset, and they say, well, that's not biblical. That's not in Tanakh. Okay, so first of all, the written Torah does refer to resurrection. Okay, but I'm not here. This is not a polemic to bring those sources. The point is that resurrection is a basic Jewish concept, always has been. I'm not going to debate this with other religions, and I'm not going to debate this with academics and secular historians or whatever. This is our tradition. This is basic Judaism. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Another side comment. I'm just trying to deal with all of the issues that pop up here, because there's so many interesting rabbit holes, like my brother David Taub has the Parsha rabbit hole, where he purposely goes on tangents. But I purposely avoid tangents. Okay, is that you're going to say to me, well, hold on a second. The Rebbe just clearly mentioned that the Mishnah says there are those Jewish people who will not have a portion of the world to come, and then the whole Maamar is built on the idea that all Israel has a portion of the world to come. So there's a letter. I even thought about maybe learning it, but I said no, because it's not the point here. We're learning a Maamar. There's a letter from the Rebbe that the Rebbe wrote to a scholar, a rabbi, who took exception with something that the Rebbe had said. This is actually before, this is in the 1940s, before the Rebbe officially accepted leadership, when still in the lifetime of his father-in-law. And there's a letter there where the Rebbe is explaining, based on sources, both in the legalistic as well as in the esoteric fields of Torah study, explaining this assertion that ultimately the entire Jewish people will take part in resurrection. Even though the Mishnah goes and says, oh, and here, asterisk, here are the terms and conditions. These may not apply in your states. Like those. All right. But I'm not going to get into that either, with your permission, because it's, again, not the point here. At any rate, so here's what the Rebbe says. How do I know when the Mishnah says Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelik le'elam haba? It's which elam haba it's talking about, because elam haba can mean this world, the physical plane, in the era of resurrection, or elam haba could mean the spiritual world, Gan Eden, paradise. Well, I can figure it out from context, because when the Gemara explains that Mishnah, it says, oh, by the way, who forfeits this portion of the world to come? Those who don't believe in resurrection. Must mean that this world to come is, which one is it referring to? Talking about resurrection. Shatam al zahu k'de'isa b'Gemara. The Gemara says very clearly the reason why they forfeit this portion. Who kafar b'tchias hamesim, because he denies in resurrection. Fichach lo yelei chelik b'tchias hamesim chulu. Therefore, he won't have a portion in the resurrection. Right? Midah keneged midah. Okay. At any rate, the point is we've established that this Mishnah is talking about the physical world after Moshiach comes, when it becomes extremely refined. And again, we're not going to talk about when does Tchias HaMesim happen, at what point. Okay, there are stages in Geula, in redemption. The first stage is simply geopolitical. It just has to do with autonomous rule of the Jewish people, according to the Torah, in their land without any type of servitude to foreign powers. So it's purely geopolitical at first. There's no supernatural change. But then obviously Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead, is a supernatural change, okay? Although some theorize that science is rapidly progressing so much that by the time Tchias HaMesim happens, which could even happen, tomorrow, Moshiach can come today, Tchias HaMesim tomorrow, and science will have advanced so much that if it'll be a miracle, it may be indistinguishable from current technology. I don't know, that's just a theory. People, maybe it'll take some cells. I mean, Hashem does it, but I'm saying it could be something that could be even explicable. Doesn't matter. Now I'm getting into Stump the Rabbi. Okay, the point is, Tchias HaMesim is supernatural, but it happens at some point in this physical world after Mashiach comes. And the point is that the Mishnah just said, Kol Yisrael yesh lem chelik le'olam haba, that the entire Jewish people have a portion in this situation. V'chol Yisrael yesh lem chelik le'olam haba, all of Israel has a portion in this situation. To be Gan Eden ksiv. Now, in contrast, I told you the other explanation of Elam Haba is Gan Eden, is the spiritual world, paradise, Elam Neshamas. The Gan Eden ksiv, regarding paradise, it says, heaven, Mi Yale Bahar Hashem, Gomer. Who can ascend to the mountain of God? Paradise is called the mountain of God. Niki Kapayim Uvar Levav. Only those who have clean hands and a pure heart. In other words, it's setting parameters. Sheyeshnam Kama Tanoyim Bichdei Lales LeGan Eden. There are many conditions in order to ascend to Gan Eden. Okay, so when it comes to Tchias HaMesim, it makes a categorical statement. Kol Yisrael, everybody come on in. When it comes to Gan Eden, heaven, it says you gotta earn it. You gotta be on the level. Not everybody is gonna make it. And then, furthermore, afilu l'Gan Eden atachtain, there are levels in Gan Eden, even the lower level, not everybody gets in. But when we talk about resurrection, it clearly says all the Jewish people. Therefore, we need to understand. Here's our question. Here's where I want you to start thinking. I told you about 5 times so far, don't think too much about certain things because it's not the path that we're going on. Here's what I do want you to think about. Here's what we need to understand. The revelation, meaning the amount of godly revelation that will occur in the resurrection, is far greater than the amount of godly revelation that is available in Gan Eden, in paradise. Gam Hagilui Shebegan Eden Hoelyan, even greater than what is available in the highest levels of Gan Eden. Gam Medarga Hachi Nailis Shebegan Eden, even the highest levels. What is the proof that this assertion is true, that the world of resurrection will be far greater godly revelation than what is available in heaven, even the highest levels of heaven? What is the proof? It is that it says, in the brackets, Ukamuvan Gamo Inyan Tchias HaMesim Atzmai, Yakumu L'Tchia Kol Yisrael, that included in the resurrection, where all the people of Israel will get up from all the generations. Gam HaNeshamas Shenimtzoim Began Eden Kama Alof Mishana, even souls who have been in Gan Eden for thousands of years. V'shalish bam b'chol yom, and then 3 times every single day that they've been there. Hey, Misalam and Odagan Nailas Yeser, they have an aliyah 3 times a day. V'afal pikein, and nevertheless, you think about how high they are, and nevertheless, la'asid lave in the future. Yislab shubagufim, they'll come back into their bodies. Why will they make this U-turn? They've been ascending for thousands of years. These souls have been ascending in paradise for thousands of years, 3 times a day. Think about how high they are, and all of a sudden they're going to make a U-turn, hairpin turn.
What's it 3 times a day? Like Kaddish?
Yeah, like the angels. Yeah. But this proves logically that the revelations that will occur in this physical world when the dead are resurrected is much greater than any godly revelation that's available in paradise, even higher, greater than the highest level of Gan Eden. What's the proof? Because souls who are on the highest levels of a Gan Eden are going to come down here. So it's a very interesting concept to think about. If you really think that heaven is the ultimate reward, then it makes no sense to say that souls who are on the highest level of heaven, well, it makes no sense even if you say souls on the lowest level of heaven will have to come back to the physical world. But how much more so it makes no sense to say souls on the very highest levels of heaven, and they will also come back to the physical world. How could that be? What, to punish them? No, God forbid, to further reward them. Because what will be available as far as godly revelation in the physical world when Moshiach comes will be greater than anything that they can experience in the spiritual realms. So that's the assertion here, which is based on logical deduction, that apparently there will be more godly revelation in the physical world when Moshiach comes than there is currently in the highest level of heaven. That also, by the way, triggered a lot of people. I did a thing at the Pesach program where I was. You know this lady, Miriam Izagwi? She has like millions of followers on social media. So she did a little clip with me. She asked me a question about afterlife. And then I mentioned about different concepts of heaven and hell. And it was like an 80-second video. And then she's like, is that the ultimate goal? I said, no, the ultimate goal is to make this world holier than heaven. And again, I told you there was a group that split off from Judaism a couple thousand years ago, and they became very popular. So apparently a lot of those people got really, really, really upset about that sentence. I got so much hate online. How can you say that? How could this world be holier than God's home? They were so upset about that idea. First of all, I think it's interesting that this infinite, omnipresent God only lives up there. No, he's in heaven. Okay, no, not on earth. Okay. But, yeah, that's the point. That this physical world is full of sin, and it could, forever? That's what you want it to be? Yeah? This world is corrupted. That's how it's supposed to stay forever? So, the physical world originally was pure and holy before the sin of the tree of knowledge. The physical world will again be pure and holy. In fact, on a greater, higher level. And the whole intermittent period, or in-between period, between the sin of the tree of knowledge and Moshiach coming, which is basically all of human history, that's an aberration. It's a descent for the sake of a subsequent greater ascent. And when Moshiach comes, the physical world will again be a place of revealed godliness on an even greater level than the physical world was at the outset. And you're going to ask a question, why? And I don't want to get into, because that's another concept next to this. But basically, when the world was pure and holy at the beginning, it was because God made it that way. It was imposed. But because of the process of us serving him in or under the conditions of exile and being partners in perfecting the world, although obviously it's not something that we can humanly do, it's only something that God's power can do, but we partner with him, or he allows us to partner with him through the mitzvahs. So then there's an additional aspect of when the world becomes refined and becomes holy and pure again, it'll have this additional advantage that we were involved in it. Well, why is that desirable? Well, why would God want to be at home in the physical world to begin with? Because God desires that ultimate paradox of infinity finding its expression with infinitude. So that paradox is even more enhanced when finite beings, imperfect, mortal, physical beings such as ourselves, are participants in the process of refining the physical world. Okay, the point is, all I'm making is that the physical world will become the highest plane of reality, to the extent that souls who are in heaven, which I guess currently you would consider the highest plane of reality. By highest plane, I mean where you can get the most godly revelation, experience the most connection with God. Those souls are going to leave. They're going to vacate those highest levels of heaven in order to be part of the resurrection here in their physical bodies on the physical plane. So what that means is that that the highest level is the physical world when it is perfected. Okay. So we haven't fully asked our question. We've set up our question. So what's our question?
Well, the question is, what is Moshiach? Because we keep saying after Moshiach comes, so what's Moshiach?
So I said, initially Moshiach just means a geopolitical event.
Okay.
It's a descendant of King David, who's a king like King David, and a Torah scholar like King David. That's it. It's just a geopolitical event. Okay. Nothing supernatural at first. Okay. So, we just said, this is a setup for our question, that apparently this physical world, when it's refined to the extent that the resurrection occurs, will be the highest possible reality. Okay, so that's the setup for our question. V'afal pikein, and nevertheless, bichdei liskais lagili the Gan Eden, in order to merit entrance into Gan Eden to experience those revelations, tzarich liyes kama tanoim, there are many preconditions. We said not everybody gets in, and even those who get in don't get into every level. Let me see your ticket. I'll tell you if you have access. Vagili de elamatria, whereas the godly revelation that will ensue on this physical plane in the era of resurrection is going to even be greater than that. Yeah, look, Kol Yisrael, and that'll be for all Jewish people. Hold on, something doesn't add up. The thing that is more available, or is categorically available to all, is on a higher level, and the thing that's selective or exclusive is on a lower level. That doesn't make sense.
Well, is it our experience, like, is godly, we're talking about godly revelation, so more godly revelation down here than up there once this world is perfected. Is that like an objective, or is that our experience?
You're asking a very good question. What do we mean by more revelation? Do we mean objectively or subjectively?
Sounds like God's choice. Less symptom.
So that is an important concept. We don't get into it so much in this Maamar, but let's continue, because in the next chapter, I think we're going to have more firm footing to understand what it is that we're really getting into. But I just want to recap. That was the end of chapter 1. So I just want to recap what we covered in chapter 1. Okay, we said that there's a Mishnah, Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelik le'olam haba. All of the Jewish people have a portion in the world to come. Well, Elam Haba can mean a couple of things. Rather famously, this is the machlekes of the Rambam and the Ramban. The Rambam, Maimonides, says that Elam Haba means the world of souls, where souls go to be rewarded after their embodiment. The Ramban, Nachmanides, says that Elam Haba, the world to come, means this physical plane after it's completely perfected and the dead come back to life. So we established that from context, the statement of the Mishnah when it says all Israel has a portion of the world to come is talking about the physical resurrection. The Rebbe then asked a question, simple question, which is, apparently the resurrection is a higher level than any level of Gan Eden, because even souls on the highest level of Gan Eden are going to experience resurrection. In other words, there will come a point where, like, think about like Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, 3,300 whatever years ago, he passed away, and he's constantly having these elevations. Think about how high he must be in heaven, and yet he's going to turn around and come back to a physical body. That's only going to be because when the physical world is so refined that it won't be a descent. It'll be the only possible way to keep going up. At that point, the only way to go up will be to come down and experience this physical world again, but in its perfected state, which will be holier than it was in the garden with Adam and Eve.
Why are we assuming that that's the level of measurement, the loftiness? Maybe God's will for bringing the Shemos down in resurrection is for a different, God has a different intention.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we connecting loftiness as the measurement?
Because we're talking about, at the end of the day, Elam Haba is talking about reward. And reward here means not just like a reward the way, an extrinsic motivator where a teacher says, everybody clean up your desk and I'll give you a candy. Reward here means the goal or the outcome, what we're accomplishing, the end vision. So the question is not just what happens at the end. The question is, what's the end game? What are we getting at? What's this all for? What's the point here? And really, this to me reveals a cultural divide that's still very, very extant within Judaism. And that is, if you ask people, what is the end game? Like, why are you doing mitzvahs? Is it to go to heaven? Or is it to make the physical world holier? It's machlekes, like everything, right? So if you'll learn Mesilas Yesharim, I'll tell you that the motivation is more pleasure in the world to come, higher levels of Gan Eden. And how do they justify that should be the purpose of creation? That my pleasure is the purpose for God's creation. So Teva HaTev Lahetiv, that it's the nature of the good to do good, and God is the ultimate good. He wants to do good. He wants to give us good. He wants us to share in it. Okay, fine. That's that approach. And then there's the other approach that the Medrash Tanchuma says, Nisavel Yeslei Dira B'Tachtenim. Hashem desired, yearned to have a dwelling place in the lowest realm, in the physical world. So they're both Elam Haba. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chayim. They're both true. The question is, which is the ultimate point? What's the real point? What's it all about? At the end of the day, all this, what's it all about? So one answer is, what's it all about? It's an opportunity to go to Gan Eden. Another answer would be, what? I'm not judging it. Don't get me started, because you know my bias. It's not right. There are plenty of very good Jews who believe in that, and I don't want to editorialize. At any rate, so somebody might say, what's it all about? It's about going to higher levels of Gan Eden. Great, okay. Some might say, what's it all about? What's this whole thing for? Oh, it's in order to create this situation of the physical world being in such a refined state that the infinite will be able to express itself within the finite, this ultimate paradox. This is what God's yearning for, and this is what He's allowed us to partner with Him in creating, and that's what we call the perfectly refined physical world. We had a taste of it in the garden with Adam and Eve, but this will be even greater than that, and it'll be so great that the bodies will come back. Okay, so to answer your question, it's not just, oh, this will happen, it's a phase, it's on the timeline. No, the point is, what is the goal? Why are we doing all of this? What are we driving toward? So this understanding of it is, it must be that the ultimate destination is the perfection of the physical plane. And that's not even the main point. That was a setup for a bigger question, which is what we're really trying to understand, which is, that's funny. And I just want to, I'm summarizing chapter 1 right now, and then I want to quickly do chapter 2. That's funny. You have two interpretations of Elam Haba. One seems to be greater than the other, because people who are in interpretation 1 of Elam Haba end up having to go to interpretation 2 of Elam Haba. The people who, they're both called Elam Haba, but the people who are in Gan Eden have to come back for Tchiyah. They don't have to, they get to, I'm saying. Okay, but here's the question. This is all I need you to know. One thing, just clear the whole thing so you can keep focused on one thing. The thing that's a higher level is less exclusive or completely non-exclusive. The thing that's a lower level, relatively speaking, is exclusive. That's weird. Everyone gets the question? Okay. What? Yeah? You got the question? Not a deep question. It's just like, that seems incongruous. Okay. Base. Okay. V'yuven zeh b'hakdim. But in order to answer this question, we have to understand another concept first. Habir de inyan zeh shagilu de lamatriyahu naila harba yesim hagilu de Gan Eden. The explanation of why there's greater godly revelation in the physical world in the time of resurrection than there is currently in Gan Eden. De l'chayra kevin shegan Eden hu elaman neshamas b'lei gufim. Seemingly, since the spiritual worlds are worlds for souls without bodies, uba elam atchia yu neshamas b'gufim, whereas the resurrection is specifically for souls in bodies. That's kind of the whole point. Mahu abiur bazeh sheba'elam atchia kshaneshama tia melubeshes beguf gashmi yia gilui naila yesem began Eden. How do you explain that there will be a greater revelation for a soul in a body than a soul that's disembodied? Generally speaking, the body is a filter.
It's a limiting factor.
It seems counterintuitive to say that a soul in a body will experience greater revelation than a soul that is disembodied. So let's understand that. Even though, yes, granted, that when the resurrection happens, the body will be in an ultimate state of refinement. That's true. For instance, like the body of Adam before the sin. It'll be like that and greater. Yitzir Kapav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like it says about Adam, that he was the handiwork of God. Shohaya Mache Galgal Chama. His heel blocked out the sun. It's a poetic way of describing the greatness of his physical body. Yesedem Azu, and even more than that, Shalasi Lave Yaguf Betachlas Hashlemis Oid Yesem Kameshel Adam Rishon. And in fact, when Tchias HaMesim will occur, the physical body will be even more refined than the physical body of Adam. Hareizehu l'chayra bir rak al zeh shel asid lave yil haneshamis hamelubashim begufim kalim lekabel gili naila yesim hagili shemis gala achshav l'neshamis b'lei gufim. That really seems to only explain why the souls back in their bodies during the times of resurrection will be able to experience more than what they currently experience in Gan Eden without their bodies. But it doesn't explain why the ultimate form of revelation will be specifically souls in bodies. Follow what he's saying? I get it. It explains. The refinement of the body explains why souls will be able to experience more in the resurrection than they currently experience in heaven. But it doesn't explain why the ultimate revelation will be in the physical body.
Were
Meaning,
we in bodies in the first revelation?
Explain your question.
At Har Sinai, were we embodied?
We were embodied and actually sent us flying out of our bodies at Har Sinai.
So the bodies couldn't contain the
They couldn't contain it, yeah. And actually, we had to be revived with the tal, with the dew that will be used at the time of resurrection. We had a little foretaste of resurrection. The Hagam de la Osid Lave Shaguf Yebetachos Hashlemas. Even though when the resurrection occurs, the body will be ultimately refined. Yaguf Gashmi, it'll still be a physical body. The Agbolis Shebedavar Gashmi Heim Yesem Agbolis Shebedavar Ruchni. And the limitations of a physical thing are clearly greater than the limitations of a spiritual entity. Ukamei Agbola Desmanu Makam Shehi Beikar Bidvarim Gashmim. For instance, the limitations of time and space, which primarily are limitations imposed upon the physical realm. So what he's saying is, it seems funny to me that I understand you're saying the body will be extremely refined. I get it. So that might explain to me why when Moshiach comes, the resurrected body then will be more capable of receiving godly revelation than the disembodied soul in heaven now. I get it. But it doesn't explain why, when Moshiach comes in the ultimate end game, that the highest possible level that you can fathom will be specifically an embodied state. Make Gan Eden higher. Right? Just make Gan Eden higher. Why does the ultimate thing have to be in the physical world when we know the inherent limitations of physicality? Okay. Let's finish off chapter 2. Okay. Nevertheless, and yet, really inexplicably, the only way the soul will be able to experience the ultimate state is by coming back into a body. So we got to understand that. Why is the ultimate level of godly revelation specifically souls and bodies?
Well, I mean, why is the ultimate a dir b'tachtonim? It's the same question.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
You're right. Okay. V'hainu shemachelukim bein hagili de Gan Eden v'hagili de Losid Love hu shebichdei lekabel hagili de Gan Eden hu al yidei havshotem et dvarim gashmim. One of the differences between the revelations in heaven and the revelations that will happen in the physical plane in the future is that in order to experience the revelations in heaven, it's through a process of disembodiment. Shekoidem aliyas and neshama legan eden tzorech liyes tchila hatvila benahar dinor l'shakoyach chezu dahai alma. In order for the soul to experience the pleasure of Gan Eden, it has to pass through the fiery river to cleanse it of all remembrances of the physical world. If the soul still retains its context of being in the physical world, it will not be capable of appreciating heaven. So it has to be purged of those memories. The point we're making is that specifically disembodiment, not just disembodiment, but stripping the soul of its physical bearings and its physical associations, all of that is necessary in order to allow the soul to experience godly revelation. So it seems very clear here that the less association you have with the physical world, the more godliness you're able to experience. That seems like a very clear equation. And in fact, even subsequent elevations within Gan Eden, not just the first entry, but the subsequent elevations as well, with every elevation, it has to forget the pleasure of the previous level of paradise. Meaning, not only does it have to be purged of its memories of the physical world before it can experience heaven, but even when it passes from one level of heaven to a higher level of heaven, it has to be purged of its memories of the previous level of heaven because it was closer to the physical world. So it's very clear, in order to receive godly revelation, we're trying to get away from physicality and its limitations as much as possible. And yet, in order to experience the revelations that will occur in the future, is specifically through embodiment. So, and the question is not answered. That's the end of chapter 2. So we're left with this question. We have a new question. At the end of chapter 1, we had a question. Why is the higher thing available to everyone and the lower thing is exclusive? In chapter 2, we ended with a different question. Well, I'll ask you another question. Why is the higher thing only available when you're in the body, which is inherently limiting?
After first stripping away all the body.
We just showed that you're supposed to strip it all away because in order for the soul to experience godly revelation in Gan Eden, it was getting removed from the body. And now we're going to say, but the ultimate is back in the body. That's the opposite. That's the opposite of everything that was established, which was clearly the necessary process, and now we're reversing it.
That's
So-
post-revelation and pre-revelation.
Okay, you throw in a lot of good, answers here, a lot of slogans. I don't want you to answer this question. I want you to think about this. I want you to ponder this. Yeah, don't take it for granted. Be like, hold on a second. That's a weird concept. I always think, and here's how I want to leave you to go meditate for the next 6 days and 23 hours. Think about this. Say, I don't know the answer, but somehow the ultimate experience of godliness is in the body. And that totally doesn't make sense. And it runs counter to everything that we know about how souls are rewarded and what souls appreciate and what they take pleasure in. I don't have an answer to it. I have a really interesting question. You got it? Okay. So by the way, that's why I was saying in the beginning, this is not a class on resurrection. I told you what I think is I told you my theory. I'm not going to repeat it because it's only fan fiction. It's my personal theory. But anyway, you see, if you learn the Maamar, at least the first 2 chapters, what's it triggering? It's triggering thoughts about the nature of physicality. Like, what's the deal with embodiment? What's the deal with physicality? Where does that all fit into the grand scheme of things? What's the end game? That kind of stuff, right?
Are there any people that will go from this physicality to the next physicality and not do that Gan Eden piece?
Okay, so this is a little stump the rabbi, but I'll do it for 30 seconds and we're going to finish. So basically your question, are there any people who will go from this physicality to the resurrection physicality without doing the spiritual thing in between? Well, in theory, people who are alive and never passed away yet, although there is, and we don't know how any of this is going to materialize until it happens, there is a concept that they will have to momentarily experience death. But what that means may not be how we understand that to mean. But there is a concept of having to return to dust, to be canceled, nullified in order to be capable of receiving the higher levels.
Well, really the question is because if the ultimate physicality, we're going to use that to understand this physicality, but can we? It's a totally different.
Wow. Okay, so that's not a something rabbi question. That's a real legitimate question, which is, I'm going to repeat that, and then we're going to, okay. If they're categorically different, the physical reality when Moshiach comes and resurrection takes place, and the physical reality as it is currently, how can we use one to learn about the other? Okay. Excellent. I'll first of all refer you to chapter 37 of Tanya, the first line, which I know you know what it is. Just pretend, because I taught you Tanya, so I want you to.
It's just the opposite
Okay.
of line 36.
Okay. So,
Keeps going.
first line of chapter 37. I think I should probably check this someday with a computer. It could be done in 2 seconds, but that it's probably the most often cited line of Tanya in the Rebbe's Sichas. And that is, in the beginning of chapter 37 of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that all of the revelations that will take place when Moshiach comes and the dead are resurrected is the outcome, the outgrowth of the mitzvahs that we do in the physical world during the time of exile. Meaning to say, there's a very organic connection, cause and effect, linear connection between the two. It is precisely, and I don't want to give away too much about where the Maamar's heading, but I guess it's okay to say this. The physical stuff that we're doing now, and by the way, physical stuff we're doing now, what do I mean when I say physical stuff we're doing? I'm not talking about eating and drinking. Mitzvahs, very good. You guys are properly brainwashed. When I say physical stuff, I don't mean chocolate cake. Physical stuff, I mean tefillin, Shabbos candles, tzedakah,
Chocolate
Mitz-
cake with a bracha.
chocolate with a bracha. Yeah. Okay, 100. Okay, good. Okay, on Shabbos. At a Shabbos kala. Okay. All right, now we made it holy. Okay, but the point is, the physical stuff that we're doing is directly linked to the refinement of the physical world. So there is not only a comparison to be made, but it's all one process. It's all one process. So that's, without saying too much about where we're heading, yeah, we will appreciate more mitzvahs and what the soul does in a body when we learn this Maamar. Okay, fine, great, awesome. All right, so we'll continue with chapter 3, God willing, next week.